It's about 5,300 years ago. In the past 1 year, the archaeological work has made huge progress, particularly in the western side of the site. We found the relics of a large wood structure, and it's well preserved. And the unique construction method is really seen in the Chinese history. And also we have a guest with us, Professor Guo Weiming, the head of this archaeological team. Mr. Guo, could you please give your greetings to our viewers? Good morning, everyone. And I know that you started very early this morning for your work. And since we are now standing very close to the archaeological site, could you please give us some more information about Jijiaocheng? It's in Lixian Plain. It's in the middle part of the plain. And it's 13 kilometers distance from Changde. This used to be the site of a tribe of the Neolithic era. And it's around 5,000 years from now. And I see a lot of demonstration boards. You said that it's in the Lixian Plain area. So the surroundings are all plain. That's correct. Jijiaocheng relic is in the middle of Lixian Plain. And Lixian Plain is a very unique area. It's surrounded by mountains in 3 directions, and on the east side, it's near the Dongtinghu Lake. So, in the midstream of Yangtze River, Lixian Plain is quite distinguished. And because of that uniqueness, since ancient times, Lixian Plain area was a livable place for our ancestors. When we arrived this morning, we found large paddy fields, and this place has abundant water supply. And I know that this relic is very famous. The first city found in Lixian Plain was Changde, which was built about 600 years ago, and that was the earliest city found in China. As to Changde City, it has been existent for 2,000 years, and after being built, 1,000 years later, Jijiaocheng came into being. That is to say, even when Changde was still existent, Jijiaocheng was put in place. They coexist. And you found 2 cities simultaneously in Lixian Plain. So those 2 cities have coexisted. But of course, between the 2 cities, what is their relationship? And what about their social structure? Do they belong to the same tribe? We still need more studies. You just mentioned that between the 2 relic sites, there is only 3 kilometers distance. It's very close. And since it's a sunny day today, I've heard that this morning there have been the sound of chickens around. So is that where the name of the city come from? According to the county records, 2 gods competed with each other about whether they are able to build one city overnight. And when the sun almost rises, one god says that the city is almost built. And since this is a place with high sea level, when the god simulates the cock crow, all the cocks in the city crows. So the other god believes that he will lose, and only 4 city doors are left there. I know it's a legend as to where the name came from. We cannot find the literature. And in ancient times, the chickens have some unique intonations. Chickens were used for telling time. When the chickens crow, it's about the sunrise time, and people will get ready for work. So it's the time teller, and it's very important. In the agricultural civilization era, people accumulated some ideas about time management based on the chickens. And what is the area of this relic site? From this map, I can see the shape of a city, and that must be the rivers around. Yes, this is the city wall, and around the city walls, those are the rivers surrounding the city, and the city area is about 150,000 square meters. But if you consider the surrounding rivers, it's 230,000 square meters. And you can find ditches here. This one ditch circles in 230,000 square meters, and the third ditch circled in over 600,000 square meters. And if you look at the broad area, including all of the riverways, then the total area of the city might be over 1 million square meters. So you can see 3 ditches are surrounding the city. And in the middle, that's the downtown area. It's a pretty unique structure. And between the ditches, there are some connected waterways. And they also have some paddy fields. And this city used to be dominated by rice crops in the ancient civilization. In Jijiaocheng relic, it was firstly found in 1978. But of course, the excavation took a long time in different stages. As we can see right here, the areas discovered over the years have been identified. Professor Guo. Firstly, it was found in the 1970s. Then, in the 1990s, Changde was discovered. And for the city sitting on the east, people had huge interest about it. So in 1997, when we were excavating Changde, we sent out a sub-team to discover the western wall of Jijiaocheng City. And then this very ancient city was unearthed. And in 1998, we dig over here, and we further proved the time periods of the city. That in 2006, the archaeological work of Jijiaocheng was listed as one of the major projects about Chinese civilizations, and we further unearthed the wood structure inside the city walls. After years of archaeological work and excavation, we found the canals, the paddy fields in the surroundings. And in about 2018, it was listed as a prioritized project of archaeologic China. So it's been 3 to 4 years for the latest round. Those are the milestones. So the red dots and the yellow dots must be the earliest findings. Yes. And where are we right now? We are standing over here. The most important finding is about the wood structure, particularly the largest one. It's called number 63. It's a very unique cultural phenomenon. It used to be a ditch in the ancient tribe, and city walls were built around the ditches. Inside, houses were built on a large scale. They also built some earthy platforms, and those platforms were the foundations of the houses. Some were wood houses, some were with the red earth, but the wood structure was the most distinguished ones. We found a lot. This largest one wood structure was built. It's numbered 63. Among all the wood houses, its size is the largest one. In that year, this house must have been specially designed and prepared. So they already have the awareness of planning the buildings, of course, since very early. For example, they also have the awareness of site selection, the digging of the ditches, the city building, and the city design. They have certain philosophies. Speaking of building houses, in the modern era, we prefer the house to sit in the south and face the north. But considering this large wood structure, what is its direction? If it's facing square north, then it's sitting in the south. But actually, this house is about 20 degrees towards the east, while it's facing the north. But basically, it's facing the north direction with 20 degrees orientation towards the east. And that's in alignment with the direction of Jijiaocheng City as a whole, because the city is also 20 degrees oriented towards the east. So I think the house is symmetrical. With the city axis. On the left side, that's the site of this architecture. Let's move over here. This is the latest finding. Yes. We started our excavation in 2020 from the west side. And that was because we found some remains of a wood structure in 2006, but we were unsure about the functionalities, the nature of the wood structure, so we went along that way to do more digging. And in 2020, we started our unearthing. And we found the wood panels, the columns on the southwestern corner of this site, which we later named F63. So we found partial of this architecture in 2020, and then in the second half of 2020 and first half of 2021, we further digged towards several directions, particularly to the north and to the east. So our working site has been expanded. We found the earth platform and the overall structure of this wood building. So we are now seeing a very complete foundation. From where we are standing, this is quite magnificent because it's very big. I remember that in the end of last year, we had an on-site interview. Only part of this structure was unveiled, but I was told the total construction area was around 500 square meters. by that time. So what is the total construction area right now? If we add in the corridors in the surroundings and the wood structure in the middle, the indoor construction area is 420 square meters. And the walls are 42 meters long, and the width is 10 meters. For the exterior corridors, they are about 4 meters wide. Some places may have even wider corridors. So the total construction area is around 630 square meters. This is the only one of similar findings. I know that this must be a very high-level construction in ancient China, of course, because it's very big in size, and the foundation and the basic structure were well preserved. For a wood structure in the Yellow River Basin, it's rarely seen. And of course, this one represents a different style. Such a wood structure along the Yangtze River Delta area, it's pretty different from the Yellow River Basin. And this is also exemplary. Now the discovery work is about finished, and the on-site workers are doing some wrap-up. This morning when we came, this whole site was covered with a plastic membrane. That was for protection purpose, I guess. Yes. The wood structure is usually organic. They are very precious. They're different from the bricks and other structure because they need to contain some water contents. So we need to protect the wood structure on site, and usually we need to increase the moisture and put on some cover to protect it. And that's only for emergencies, for the site of archaeology. And right now we prove the efficacy of our protection measures. You mean that the site cannot be too moist or too dry? If it's too dry, we need to spray some water. And if it's raining season, we must use the plastic cover to keep this site from the raindrops. And this morning when I came, I saw the staff removing the water on top of the film, and then they carefully remove this membrane. And I hear that this is the foundation ditch. They firstly built an earthy platform, and then they dig into the earth. Why? That was the foundation of one architecture, because this house is very big. It surely have certain height above the foundation. So the foundation must be very deep in order to support such a high building. The higher the building is, the deeper the foundation is. That's the common sense, even in modern times. For us to build high buildings, we need to build a very strong and supportive foundations. But in the ancient times, they put in a lot of wood panels in the foundations in order to support the basic structure. And then they put on the columns. In the foundation, I see some remaining wood structure. For example, the columns, the wood columns. They used to be the pillars and columns of the house. This site is not very well preserved, but we can see the wood remains. After the columns and pillars were eroded, some remains were left behind. Actually, for the columns remaining here, wood cannot be found, but the traces are here. So, from the height of the remaining columns protruding above the ground, we do some clearings. So this must be one house. And now the staff is adding moisture. If it's dehydrated, there will be some chemical reaction, and the earth will be cracking. Our cameraman will have to be very careful because the ground is not flat. How long have you been working on this site? Throughout the whole year. The Spring Festival is around the corner, so basically we've been staying here all year round. So, which region are we now? The wood structure is well preserved here in this region. We've done some protection measures ever since the discovery, and we found this segment before the eastern part was discovered. Are those all wood? It's very long. What is the longest one? This one is the longest. In between, it's hollow because it's eroded, but this one is about 9 meters long. And what is this wood composition? There are two types of wood here. Basically, Nanmu. And is it from this local area? We need to study about it. In the era of Jijiaocheng, people have been living on this piece of land for thousands of years. So based on the common sense, on the plain area, there surely will be some trees. But since people have been developing this piece of land for years, whether Nanmu was around, we are still unsure. But since this city is very close to the hills, I guess the wood materials could be acquired from the surrounding mountains. You just said that there will be pillars and columns on top. And I see about between every 40 to 50 centimeters, there are two remaining columns. Where were those columns connected? The columns were the main structure. They were the basic. And when the columns rise up high, there will be some beams on top of the columns. And the first floor of the house was built with the beams. The house may be two-storied or even higher. The columns are quite big. If it's just a one-floor building, the columns will not be so big. So we believe it's at least a two-storied, but we cannot assume how high this building is, and we found no traces of the height. Since the columns are very big, I think this is commensurate with the total size of the house. Those are very important samples for architectural studies. You can see some holes. They are about 45 degrees between. As to the functions of the holes, we are still unsure. We don't know why there are holes in the wood. An expert in the ancient architecture came here, and they were all unsure about the functions of the holes. Maybe they assume that they will plug in some other wood sticks to support this foundation, because those columns are below the ground. In the foundation, it's almost 1 to 2 meters deep underground. Then why do you set up those columns with the holes? People say that those holes are digged for the transportation purpose, because it's convenient for them to carry those wood columns together when you plug in a wood stick to connect all of them. But that's just a presumption. You need further evidence. And the on-site worker is still doing some protection work. When you are wrapping up, what other steps will you take? We must distill as much information as possible from the wood panels. For example, the processing method, and the processing tools. If you build a house, why are you building such orderly foundation? You can certainly set up the beams with any rough foundation, but based on what we are seeing, those wood columns are very orderly placed. They cut the tree trunk and they trim the trunk to make it very flat and smooth. It takes even dozens of processes to make a tree trunk like this. It's challenging with no metal instruments in that era. It took a lot of time. So we need to further explore the processing methods and procedures. How those wood trunks were processed, how were they transported here? We hope to distill the basic information and restore. That's the basic job for archaeology. And the second job for us is to distill information about the surrounding environment. For example, why is this site such well preserved, but the preservation condition will be worsened in the winter time, and you can find the mud. And you also have questions, for example, why don't you build such a house in a dry piece of land? We need to also study the soil, the underground water, the climatic conditions, and the microbials. Those are all about the indicators of the burial surroundings. We must get a clue about the environmental parameters, for example, the minerals, the physical structure. Those are all the basics. They're not just about archaeological information. They will help us to protect and preserve this wood structure in the future. Another point is for the pits. We have only sized up only a small portion of them. Now we found about 80. Based on the 2006 findings, the total area might be thousands, 4,000 to 5,000 square meters. It's certainly over 1,000 square meters, but we have only digged 80 meters. That's for the rice area, and we can further calculate the total output of grains in ancient times, maybe over 200,000 jin. Maybe those are the remains of the processed grains. The production and processing of grains were very mechanical. Food was the most significant treasure. Maybe they already have some centralized management and distribution system. That society was quite intensive. And that represents the ancient civilization of this city. So those remaining brands we are collecting right now may tell us some stories. And in our archaeological process, we need to know more. What other remains have you found? I heard you found some ceramics. Yes. For the wood buildings, there will be a lot of remains and relics. The wood building itself is an archaeological relic, but of course there will be some relics for the usage of people living here. For example, the production tools and living tools. Organic tools may be unable to be preserved. We are lucky to find this wood building, but what were the people living here wearing? Were they using a lot of wood tools? In another relic, we found one bowl, so there was certainly some traces of the tools and instruments. But they disappeared. We can only make full use of the limited information to assume the utensils that people used to use. Ceramics will remain unchanged even for 10,000 years buried underground. We are surely certain that we need to restore the ceramics. Our reporter paid visit to an archaeological station. Let's see how the ceramic pieces were restored. Good morning, everyone. I am now in the archaeological station of Lixian Plain. The ceramic pieces were transported here, waiting for the further clearing and restoration and studies. Those bags were holding the newly transported pieces. They were piled up. That's huge workload. Since 2019, tens of thousands of ceramic pieces were transferred here, and after days of restoration, hundreds of ceramics have been restored. So how are those ceramic pieces restored? The first step is to clean it. For every plastic bag of the pieces, we will clean them one by one, and we must be careful about preserving the important information on the pieces. For example, the colored paintings. We must be very careful when we are cleaning. Take this as an example. It's already cleaned up. When it's unearthed, there will be a layer of earth on top. We must clean it away. But some cannot be cleaned. For example, this one. It's very soft. You need to use the small brush and knife to take the earth out. I am now doing the second step, about piecing together the ceramics pieces. This is a pot. When you are piecing together, you must know the position of each piece. And they have different shapes. For example, this one is more flat. And this one is curved. This must be in the middle. And the third step is to use the gypsum to stick the pieces together. You must mix the gypsum with the water according to certain proportion, and then you attach the gypsum and wait for the weathering. Now part of the ceramics pieces have been restored, and you can see those utensils was now on the shelves. I see the colored ceramics here. It shows the high level of production in that year. I see some patterns on top. What is the story about it? That's for decoration. And what is this ceramic pot? It's rounding shape at the bottom. They cannot be placed directly on the floor. Thank you, Jijiaocheng, for the introduction of the restoration work of the ceramics. As I said before, we found some brands, and the staff are still collecting the samples of the brands. Those bags were already the collected samples. You have done some temporary protection about protecting the profiles. I also see some notes about different layers of the profile. That's about the position of different layers, because for our ancestors, all their living traces are now buried in the earth. So we have to dig into the earth and note down the different layers, because the traces of different living periods belong to different layers. And there are different cumulative layers. We need to tell the difference between different layers. That's the most significant thing about archaeology. Then we can get an idea about the different accumulation era and periods. There may be different remaining objects from different periods. So we need to tell the difference between different accumulation units. You can see the lines separating the different periods. So this site is like a thick book telling us a lot of information. So do our archaeologists must be very careful? Yes. Maybe some of our viewers have a dream of becoming an archaeologist. If that is the case, could you share with them about the most important quality as an archaeologist? Carefulness comes first. And also, they must be conformant with the procedures, and they must grasp the field technologies and techniques. For them to become an archaeologist, they must have the basic skills. By acquiring the basic skills, if they are able to get accustomed to the on-site work environment, they are qualified. Last year, Jijiaocheng relic made a lot of progress. Aside from here, you also found some surrounding information. For example, you mentioned 古稻田, meaning that rice was commonplace. Jijiaocheng, as the birthplace of the ancient cities in China, what is the role of the city? Jijiaocheng was a unique city. There are clusters of tribes, and the ditches, the canals, the paddy fields make up the clusters of the tribes. We've introduced the area of these clusters. It's about 1 million square meters. If the surrounding paddy fields and the waterways are added in, which are another 10 square meters, they are like the supportive living space, making up the Jijiaocheng society. The society has evolved. And in Jijiaocheng, we found Pentoshan, cultural relics. Pentoshan has about 8,000 years ago, and we found Tangjiagang period cultural relics, and also Daxi. And complete evolvement ever since Daxi. So for 8,000 years, the series of cultural representatives were found. This site is like a witness. And what is the foundation of supporting this evolvement of society? Agriculture. Tangjiagang culture, Daxi culture, and all of the series of cultures relied on the rice-based agriculture civilization. So in historical periods, and even now, it takes the same procedure. For 10,000 years, the production and living space of our ancestors are carried on. So the paddy fields in ancient times, even before the times, are still now being toiled. What does it mean? It means this piece of land is stably used, and rice production is a very stable source of production. And the paddy fields toiled by our ancestors were the same ones right now. It's difficult to find the correct form of the paddy fields in ancient times, but by testing the samples here, we are able to identify the paddy fields. For example, in the surroundings, we found one because there was one layer of cumulative soil. They are very black mud covered by water. Preserving the paddy fields in ancient times. We digged further to find such a paddy field. So that was a proof of the well-developed rice production technologies. Another point is people have been living and reproducing based on the rice production civilization. Human beings were evolving, the rice production was evolving, and the society is evolving as well. This ancient city came into being. In Lixian Plain and Jijiaocheng, we found some correlation between the city with the surroundings, but the source of revenues were mainly from rice production. The city basically don't earn revenues from elsewhere. From that sense, Jijiaocheng civilization is self-reliant based on rice production. The civilization came into being because of that agriculture, and that's compatible with the entire Chinese civilization history. The civilization is self-reliant as well, in total, and the Chinese civilization can extend further, and it's organic, original. In southern China, rice production is dominant. And because of the agricultural civilization, many states came into being in ancient China. Are there any mysteries left for your work in Jijiaocheng? There are a lot of mysteries. We have not only finished the tip of an iceberg. For such a large structure, who was the owner? What people have done inside the house, those are the mysteries remaining. And what is the social function of this house? We need to learn the stories about the owners, the society. If we can reveal the answer, that would be very helpful for our tracing of Chinese civilization. So you must have a lot of work this year. Since this is the beginning of the new year, Do you have any New Year wishes, Professor Guo? Standing on our ancestors' piece of land here, we are exploring the ancient material civilization. We want to trace back to the origins and unveil the history of our civilization. That is my mission, and General Secretary Xi Jinping bestows his hopes on us archaeologists. We need to build the archaeology with Chinese characteristics. We hope that with my work, we can reveal the formations and evolvement of Chinese civilization. Why was the 5,000-year-long civilization never stopped and disturbed? I hope that with my work, we can contribute to the Chinese civilization discovery. Our staff members, universities have been cultivating the talents for archaeology purpose. We hope to remain true to that mission. And the entire industry of archaeology, the discipline of archaeology, and the workforce of archaeology are all serving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation with our due contribution. That's also my wish. Thank you, Professor Guo. We are also looking forward to more discoveries and findings about Jijiaocheng relics, and also best wishes to Professor Guo and your team. I hope everything goes well with your work and your life. Thank you. Thank you for watching.